Now, concerns around China continue to grow as it becomes increasingly evident that that superpower is readying itself for military expansion, if you like. Joining us now to discuss this, as well as the Indonesian presidential election this week, which was a pretty fascinating result. Joining us is Andrew Phelan, former DFAT Australia-China Council scholar. Have a go. Here we go. Andrew, great to see you again. Now, tell us what. Let's get on to China in a second, but I want to hear your thoughts on the Indonesian presidential election. So, this character is an ex-military guy. Is that a good thing for Australia or a bad thing?
Yeah, you're quite right, Rowan. Selamat pagi, everyone in Indonesian. Good morning. It's been a fascinating process. Prabowo Subianto is an ex-Kopassus Special Forces general, and he's sort of got one foot in the Suharto era, which was more of a military dictatorship. Indonesia's changed so much since then. And he was the first over the line in a three-horse race against two other candidates, Anies Baswedan, who was the mayor of Jakarta, former education minister, academic, very personable. All three of these candidates speak very good English. Ganjar Pranowo, the other guy that was running for president, was the mayor of Central Java. And both he and Baswedan were out in front of the COVID pandemic. Pranowo was on his bicycle. Both those two had a little bit of controversy around them, around the political football of using Islam for political reasons. The mayor of Jakarta booted out a Chinese Christian mayor on a blasphemy charge. And the other guy was the guy that banned an Israeli soccer team from playing in a Youth World Cup. So literally a political football and a known gold. But back to Prabowo, to get around his the downside of his past, he ran a brilliant campaign bringing in Jokowi, the outgoing president's son, who's 36 years old. And if I think of myself at 36, I hope Gibran Rakabuming Raka is his name, is a bit more switched on than I was when I was 36. But he wasn't allowed to run at that age. So there was a court case. You had to be 40. So they found a loophole. It helped the fact that that the judge was a relative. He's since had to resign because of that decision, but nonetheless, they found a loophole to bring Jokowi's son. So Jokowi, the outgoing president's shadow, has really loomed over this election. Prabowo, what will he do? He's got a bit of a reputation for fits of pique and anger. At the Shangri-La dialogue in Singapore a year or so ago, unannounced, he to his colleagues, the president, the foreign minister, he talked about a peace plan for Ukraine, which was applauded by China. And so that was a bit of a surprise. But I think from an Australian perspective, and he's got Catholics and Protestants in his family, it'll be continuity with the Jokowi era. Jokowi had a reputation for infrastructure. Yep.
Andrew, I wanted to sort of jump in here and move to the other big topic, of course, here, which is China. And I want to get your take on this because, on the one hand, the Albanese government has said, we've made things more stable now with China. On the other hand, we've seen an awful lot of aggression from China, weird incidents like the sonar ping and other sorts of things. Are relations with China back on track, or has Albo made a meal of this?
I usually say we should think of China holistically. I'm going to make an exception in this case. We know that China's facing a lot of headwinds. We've got the real estate crisis. Real estate was 25% of the economy. Trillions have been wiped off the stock market, and the local government debt's in trillions, and the economy's slowing. It's got a demographic time bomb. However, today, China manufactures the next 9 global manufacturers' combined output put together. So it is the sole manufacturing superpower. At the turn of the century, the US made about twice as much goods as China. By 2008, China had caught up. Today, it's about 2x the size of the US. And what it's doing now is it's focusing on its strengths. So there's kind of two Chinas, if you like. So the manufacturing powerhouses doubling down on what it's good at. Electric vehicles, batteries, shipbuilding. They now produce 50% of the world's new ship tonnage. And they are exporting EVs hand over fist. They're making new car carriers. BYD, for example, which overtook Tesla, in volume in Q4 last year, has had a 7,000 vehicle roll-on, roll-off car carrier go to Europe. They're planning 7 more. And I should add that the Chinese Navy added 7 hulls in the last year. We can't even crew our puny Navy. And why this is not an absolute emergency and why we're not seeing ads for naval recruitment on the TV is beyond me. So an essay that's been doing the rounds in the last week in the US is how primed is China for war. The other thing is whether China attacks Taiwan, it's bumping against Philippine vessels in the Philippines. That's another, in the West Philippine Sea, that's another flashpoint. Whether they actually go to war is beside the point. The fact is they're mobilizing for war, and we need to prepare accordingly should that eventuate.
Well, I'm not quite sure we have the government in place to do that, but you never know. Another reason we need a coalition government in there. Sorry, Andrew, quickly.
Just a final point before I go, Rowan. China and Indonesia are sort of converging in the production of nickel in Indonesia, which is dirty, poor labour and environmental standards, very dangerous. And so we ought to be asking the question about the EV that's parked in your driveway. How good for the planet is that EV when the cobalt's coming from Congo, the rare earths which China's weaponizing are coming from the cancer city in Inner Mongolia, Chilean copper that's fired by coal-fired power, and so on. You know, these are things that the Teals, the Greens, and Labor are not talking about, and they should be.
Fantastic, 100%. Andrew Phelan, thanks so much for coming on Outsiders, and we'll see you again soon.